And I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I had one more batch of bacon to cook, but I just got it out of the oven. And I hope you're enjoying the breakfast that I made for you this morning. It means a lot. So at Edison Research, we do a lot, obviously, to track the podcasting space. I'm sure you've seen some of our data. We also do a lot of brand lift research in both the branded podcast space and in brand advertising in general. And I'm going to show you the results of one of those studies. And of course, it's going to go up, right? I'm going to show you an A and a B, and the B is going to be better than the A, and you're going to go, okay, great. But I also want to tell you why it works and why it's important and why branded podcasts in particular are really vital to the space. We did just a couple of months ago a study in partnership with Ad Results Media called the Super Listener Study. It's our third annual Super Listener Study, and it's a project where we survey the heaviest listeners to podcasts, the people who listen to more than 5 hours a week. They're in those kind of top 2 quintiles. And we talk to them about advertising and sponsorship and their relationship with the medium and with other media as well in terms of advertising, because they're really the canary in the coal mine. They're the people who hear the most ads, right? Because they're listening to more podcasts than anybody else. So they are the ones who are squaring the spaces and mailing the chimps and zipping the recruits and all of that that we do in podcast advertising. And a couple of things about these folks. Number one, for years and years, I've been talking about the podcast listener as an affluent target, an attractive target, people with a lot of disposable income. They've been very big for DTC. They've been very big for any number of categories. They spend a lot of money. But here's the thing that doesn't get talked about enough. They're almost unreachable. And here's why. First of all, of these super listeners, you can see almost all of them subscribe to something like Netflix or Amazon Prime, right? 94% now subscribe to any one of those, right? And those services are either commercial free or, let's say, commercial Spartan, right? There's no ads on Netflix. There may be product placement, but if they're spending all of this time watching Netflix, all of this time watching things on Amazon Prime, HBO Max, et cetera, all of these services, that's hours and hours and hours that they are essentially unreachable by traditional kinds of advertising. And the same is true with their audio consumption. Today, over 3/4 subscribe to some kind of premium audio service. And people are subscribing to these things not just for convenience and choice, but for a very important reason. For those of you in the advertising game, they don't like you very much, right? They don't love advertising. And one thing that's grown just year over year even, why do people subscribe to premium, in this case, premium audio services? That percentage to hear fewer ads is growing and growing and growing. People are turning away from kind of traditional interrupt style advertising. And when we ask these super listeners again, how important is it to you to limit your exposure to advertising? In just 1 year, that number went up 9 percentage points, right? So these are people that don't want to be interrupted. They don't want crap ads. But the same group of people, these nearly unreachable people who are spending so much time with advertising free or advertising Spartan services, they think this about podcasts: it's the best way to reach you. These are people that don't like to be advertised to, admitting that, well, okay, podcasts, I'm good with that. Now, there's a reason for this. There's a why behind all of this, and the why for it is older than podcasting itself. In fact, it goes back to a study that was published in the Journal of Advertising Research back in the early 2000s on something called true sponsorship. Now, there are certainly advertisements which advertise a product, a brand, or a service, but a true sponsorship, and there's 20 years of research on this, is where there's really no tie between a product or a particular product or a brand or an ad message. There's simply the mention of the company that brings you that particular piece of programming that you want, right? And even in the earliest days, and this was all internet-driven and not podcasting-driven necessarily, you saw incredible lift, and this was some work that was done on Volvo. And the reason why all of this works, the reason why branded podcasts work, is a very specific one. And it really comes back to this concept of true sponsorship. True sponsorship where there is exclusivity. There's nobody else advertising on the podcast. There's no overt ad on the podcast. There's simply, here's this great content. It's being brought to you by the folks at name the company, right? There's an emotive connection. There's no strings attached. There's no offer necessarily. And for those of us that have been in the advertising game for a long time, that might make you wince. How does this work? How could you do such a thing? But it does work, and here's why. An ad changes how you feel about a product, but true sponsorship, that which a branded podcast gives you, changes how you feel about the people who work at that company. The people who bring you this content you love can't be all that bad, right? That's the thing that it changes. And I want to close here by sharing with you some data from a study that we did for a large car brand, certainly one of the top 3 car brands. I can't name it, but I have drawn it for you. That's what it looks like. And this was a true sponsorship. This is a true branded podcast. That yes, the sponsor was named. There was no overt ad. There was no buy this truck or buy this car. None of that. Just here's this great content, fantastic show, brought to you by the people at that car, which I know you recognize what that is. That's a Lamborghini. No, I don't know what that is. And here's what they told us, right? Now, as I mentioned, it's a very, very well-known car brand. And in fact, in an unaided recall question with our national online panel, it was number 1. So it's a very well-known car brand. But those who heard the podcast, that number shot up a lot more, right? So certainly that recall was there. People thought about the brand. And then we asked, can you think of a brand that you heard? Because when we talked to people about the podcast, we didn't tell them we were going to talk to them about ads. We told them that we were going to talk to them about the content. But they still strongly recalled the brand, again, because it brought them this great content. And then we asked them a number of questions, and these are really the kind of perceptual questions, I think, that change hearts and minds about a brand. You're not going to sell a car in a podcast, but you might move somebody towards thinking a little bit different about your car company. And the first 3 there, the podcast was relevant and relatable. Good job by them. I would definitely remember that this podcast featured the brand, the car brand in particular. And this podcast showed me a different side of that brand. It surprised people about the brand and about the people who work behind it. And now you know why. It's that true sponsorship angle, that no strings attached, that emotive exclusivity, all of that makes people feel differently about the brand. And the actions that they plan to take, 58% plan to search online for more information about that brand, 47% would tell a friend or family, and over a third said that they would plan to visit the brand's website to learn more. And now you know why that is. And that's what's important about all of this. That's what's important about branded podcasts and why they're such a big player in the space, because they can change how people feel about the people who work behind the brands that are advertising. And that's really what podcasting's power is. Enjoy your breakfast. I'll cook more. Thank you.